When we look at Roman temples, we run into a significant issue, which is Rome becomes not only the center of the Roman Empire, but later the center of the church. And so many of these temples will be destroyed or converted in some cases before they're destroyed into churches, which changes the overall fabric. We don't have very many original Roman temples. And it's just because it's at the center of what would become Christianity that we run into that problem. We don't run into as much of a problem in Greece, but we saw some of those temples, including the Parthenon, being changed into a church. This is a representation of a general Roman temple, and it looks a lot like an Etruscan temple. We have that pedestal that it's sitting up on, made of concrete and rubble. There's the stairs to the front. We have the colonnade in front, that deep set front porch. And the example we're looking at here is a rebuilt temple, restored, and this is the temple of Portonus. In other words, of basically a god of good fortune. And we find pottery under the shrine, which helps date the temple. This is a very common temple design. This is found throughout the empire and would be made of whatever local stone they had. In Rome itself, almost everything is going to be made of limestone or marble, although concrete will be very, very common as well. And when we look at the temple, it has a very specific plan to it. We have a cella in the center. Unlike the Etruscans, it's a single cella. But then we have that elevation, staircase to it, the deep set porch, but then the columns run around the side, even though they're engaged columns. They're not freestanding. There's no peristyle running around it. And it is eclectic. They're borrowing from different groups. From the Greeks, they get the idea of the use of the columns. They will use Doric, Ionic, and Corinthian, as well as two others, the Tuscan, which is very simple, no fluting, and looks like a Doric column, and the the composite, which is a combination of the Ionic and the Corinthian. So put them together into one very, very ornate column. They will use the frieze from the Greeks. They will use the columns from the Greeks. And then what they will do is they will cover, oftentimes these temples, if they're not limestone, they're going to be concrete, but they will cover it with stucco, with plaster, and paint it to look like marble, or in some cases, they will actually cover it in thin pieces of marble to give it the impression of actually being a marble structure. From the Etruscans, we get that deep set front porch. We get the front staircase. We have the high podium that it's sitting on, and the freestanding columns in the front. There are sometimes pedimental statues like we see from the Greeks, but not very often. So they are mixing the ideas. From the Romans, we're getting the use of concrete, not just the podium, but sometimes the entire temple will be concrete and brick and then covered with some kind of marble material or stone material. And we see this mixture of elements that makes it typically Roman, borrowing from the Greeks and the Etruscans, as well as a couple of ideas that are their own. And the Romans are doing this all the time. They're borrowing from other societies. They're building on the shoulders of giants. It's just with the Romans, we tend to see it more openly than what we see with other societies.